10 days to go until PoE2's early access launch, and we continue onwards with some of the most interesting nodes on the PoE2 passive tree. I was able to capture some of these during my playtime at the PoE2 event in LA, and today it's the dexterity-aligned area of the tree, where the monk starts. Getting straight into it with some mana leech notables, firstly Siphon, which is located very close to the monk start. Siphon makes you recover 2% of mana on kill and increases the amount of mana leeched by 25%. There's also Manifold method, which is found closer to the edge of the tree. This one grants 50% increased amount of mana leeched and increases your chance to inflict ailments against rares and uniques. Now, I wanted to highlight these two nodes because they're going to be incredibly powerful with the Acolyte of Chayula Monk Ascendancy, which makes mana leech instant and has a node which will recover energy shield based on mana leeched. So these two notables will massively improve the amount of mana you'll leech per hit, which will in turn lead to a lot more instant recovery for both mana and energy shield if you have both Ravenous Doubts and Consuming Questions. The 2% mana recovery on kill is also very powerful if you're intending to use Mind Over Matter, as this form of recovery and the mana leech with Ravenous Doubts are both instant, which bypasses the less recovery rate downside on MOM. Next up, Briny Carapace, 60% increased stun threshold for each time you've been stunned recently. This node is going to be a really nice defensive measure to have to help prevent your character from being chain stunned. Stun threshold is based on maximum life, but there are several notables around the intelligence area of the tree which help to improve the stun threshold for energy shield or hybrid builds, and I think this node will be really nice to have early on in progression before you find a better solution to stun. Okay, here's a couple of poison nodes. Building Toxins, found on the edge of the tree, which grants an extra poison stack but reduces poison duration by 25%, and Escalating Toxins, which is right next door, providing 10% increased poison duration per poison inflicted recently, up to 100%. Now, in the context of PoE1, Escalating Toxins is obviously ridiculously strong, but for how PoE2 is changing poisons, it's not nearly as good. In a mapping setting, you should be able to reach the maximum duration on the node quite often as long as you're inflicting poisons on monsters fast enough, but that may not be all that useful. Where it matters more is on single target, where you'll need to not only be inflicting poisons quickly, but to benefit the most from the increased duration, you'll want to be able to inflict as many poisons as possible, and we currently don't have all of the information for how many stacks one may be able to achieve to be able to judge just how good this node might be. I believe we've seen 3 or 4 sources of additional poison stacks, which all have their own downsides. While the Pathfinder can double that total at the cost of a less duration modifier, this one is going to be a wait and see for me. Next we have Slippery Ice. This is a cool one. 25% reduced effect of chill on you, unaffected by chill while dodge rolling. So we know that dodge rolling will cover the same amount of distance across the full duration of the roll that would have been covered by walking normally, but this node will allow your dodge roll to be much more effective while chilled. Not only for moving, but also for getting out of the way of dangerous AoEs where walking out of them would otherwise be slower due to the chill. Inner Faith is located close to the outer edge, 20% increased evasion rating, 20% increased maximum ES, and 25% reduced effective curses on you. This is just a really solid node to be picked up on any character scaling energy shield and evasion, as it just grants a bunch of useful stats. Dark Entries is another node located on the outer edge, and again, I don't have too much to say about this one other than it just being a really good node. +1 to the level of all Chaos skills. The 4 small nodes leading up to it may make this one a favourable anoint for builds that want it. The Eternal Youth Keystone is changed from PoE1 and it finds itself on the opposite side of the passive tree. It still makes Energy Shield Recharge apply to life instead, but also makes recovery from your life flask apply to Energy Shield instead. Now, one interesting thing I'm noticing on the passive tree for PoE2 is that options for Energy Shield recovery are extremely limited compared to PoE1. For example, in the version of PoE2 I played in LA, there was no Ghost Reaver Keystone on the tree, and I didn't see any nodes for Energy Shield Leech. And I think this is very deliberate, as there's a lot more nodes to invest in to scale Energy Shield Recharge instead. However, Eternal Youth provides an alternative for ES recovery using your Life Flask, as there's a decent amount of notables in the area that grant Life Flask charges over time, and some that grant a chance to not spend any Flask charges too. Next is another keystone, Resonance, which makes you gain a certain type of charge instead of another. Power instead of Frenzy, Frenzy instead of Endurance, and Endurance instead of Power. This one will enable some builds to be able to use or boost the use of skills that they otherwise wouldn't have been able to do before, and keep in mind that charges in PoE2 do not have any inherent bonuses like they do in PoE1. Wild Storm is another very strong notable located towards the outer edge of the tree. 15% more maximum lightning damage. Since lightning damage modifiers typically have low minimum and high maximum damage ranges, this one is great to boost that maximum damage range even further and improve the average damage roll. Okay, check out this notable, Spaghettification. This one is crazy. 3% move speed, 29% increased chaos damage, minus 13% chaos resistance, 23% reduced light radius, and 7% increased attributes. This is just a really strong node for any chaos damage build. The light radius modifier is going to be somewhat annoying, and you'll need to overcome the chaos resistance downside too, but the rest of the stats gained are just incredibly useful in pretty much any build utilising chaos damage. I expect to see this one getting picked up a lot. Alright, the best nodes are saved till last, and there's 4 of them. Let's start with Energise, located on the outer edge of the tree. 35% chance for trigger skills to refund half of energy spent. So the energy mechanic is a system tied to some trigger-based meta gems which reserve spirit, and these gems will gain energy whenever a condition is met. For example, Cast on Shock gains energy upon shocking an enemy. Once enough energy is reached, the socketed spell is triggered and energy is fully depleted. But this node will provide a chance to retain some of that energy so that the next trigger goes off sooner. The value of this notable goes up massively the more energy gems you're using. One with the Storm is a Quarterstaff notable found on the outer edge of the tree, which makes Quarterstaff skills which consume power charges count as consuming an additional charge. Flicker Strike, anyone? Okay, lastly, these nodes. Yes, the Trickster is back in PoE2, well, not as an Ascendancy, but in Spirit. Spectral Ward grants +1 to maximum ES per 12 evasion on your equipped body armor, while Subterfuge Mask grants +2 evasion per 1 maximum ES on your equipped helmet. We currently have no idea about the scaling we're going to have access to on endgame bases. For example, how much armor or evasion or ES will they provide at the top end, and how high can any local modifiers scale up to? Regardless, I expect to see a lot of monk builds taking these nodes. And that's it, some of the interesting nodes in the int dex portion of the tree. If you've liked this video and you want to see more of other parts of the tree, make sure to subscribe, as I'll be putting out more videos like this in the time between now and launch. Thanks for watching this video, and as always, stay tuned and stay safe.